Welcome to the Life You Love podcast. This is our now third or fourth monthly Q&A episode. At the end of every single month, we've been compiling all of the questions that you guys leave us in Spotify and pulling them into a monthly Q&A, which is so fun. I feel like it's a good way to kind of like test different topics that we want to talk on or that you guys want to hear about into like these little mini Q&A episodes. So we have 5 or 6 questions here that we want to get through in today's episode, and let's get into them. The first one, I really like this question, and Grace and I had to think about this for a while. This said, you both have accomplished so much. I want to hear a humble brag on what makes you each feel cool. Could be a big milestone or something personal like a system at home, but when it comes to your own self-reflection, what makes you the most excited for yourself individually?
So I genuinely, we were sitting here being like, what are our humble brags? And I was like, Erin, I can brag about you. Like, I was like, let me list some things off that I think should be your humble
And I
brags.
could brag about you, but it's
I
hard to brag about
know
yourself.
it is. Honestly, so one thing that my manager recently was like, they made a post on their Instagram page basically like shouting out their creators on the roster for like different things that they think like fun facts about them. And she was like, we think that your fun fact should be that you've never had a full-time job. Like you have always worked for yourself. Like ever since college, like I started my business fresh out of college and I never like my business worked basically from day one. Like I made it work from day one. And I've never had another full-time job except working for myself. And I was just kind of like, oh, like I was like, when you put it that way, like, yeah, that is, I mean, I guess that's kind of cool, but I was like, I don't really ever think twice about it, to be honest. But I feel like maybe that would be my humble brag. I don't,
No, I love that. And that is so cool. And it is funny because everyone's life experience is so different. Like you probably don't think twice about it because that just is your life. That's how you've been
Mhm.
operating for literally your entire life. But that's so different than my experience because before I became self-employed, I had 17 different jobs. And they weren't full time. Like I had a bunch of part-time
Yeah,
jobs in there too, but a lot of them were like internships in my major and then full-time jobs out of college and stuff. So it's like it's so funny how everyone's life paths are so different.
I know, honestly. And I just don't really think twice about it necessarily because it just has been my life and what I've done the last 4.5 years. But I don't know if I would, I'm trying to think if there's ever like another big milestone or I would say the other humble brag, and this is like I don't know. I guess it is a humble brag, but so I don't have a car payment because the so my mom bought a car 17 years ago and she drove it and then ended up giving the car to my brother when the car was like paid off and whatever, and then my brother drove it for a while and they gave it to me. And I think that there are a lot of conversations around like building generational wealth and people don't like hearing about it, but I love hearing about it. Like when I have friends that are like, yeah, I'd never had to pay for college or whatever because my parents paid for it. I'm like, heck yes. I'm like, because I bet you maybe that wasn't always the case in your family. And that's definitely like without getting into the weeds of it, that's definitely the case for my family. Both my parents grew up, I would say, like pretty poor. And like then my family was able to be more like middle class, lower middle class. And so this car, it like the fact that I get to drive it, I get to reap like the benefits of the sacrifices that my parents made when they were younger is like so cool to me. So that car and the fact that I drive a 17-year-old car and I have no car payment, like I love that. Like I feel like that would also be my humble brag that I haven't like
Wait, I love that too.
bought another car, gotten myself into the idea that I need like a really expensive car. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to ride out like, because I do think that that car is an example of how hard my parents have worked to put my brother and I in a different financial situation than they had to grow up in. And so to me, I'm like, yeah, she's not the cutest. She doesn't have a backup camera. She's got a big dent on the side of the car now that I hit a little pole in my parking garage. And it's definitely not like the sweetest ride ever, but I'm like, no, I love it. And I absolutely love my little 2009 Toyota Camry. That'd be
I
like
love that
2008.
so much. Yeah, and I love that perspective, like you reaping the benefits of your parents' like hard work to put yourself in that situation and like give you that generational wealth. That is what we're all working for. And I feel like people try to discount it or like downplay it, but at the end of the day, like you want to work to giving your kids generational wealth. So like why are we not bragging about the small ways in which our parents are giving back to us too? I thought
Yeah.
this question was funny too because it said like the ways that you guys feel cool, or how was it worded? It said what makes you each feel cool. I like would not describe myself as a cool person at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like what makes you feel cool? I don't know. Like I
I
don't
feel like you give cool girl energy though.
really
You
okay,
give
I
cool girl and I give weird girl. That's how I view this.
oh, that is so not true. That is like so not true at all. I don't think that I give cool girl. Like I see some girls on TikTok and I'm like, no, you give cool girl, but I don't think that I do at all. So we were really trying to like rack our brains this morning on what we could humble brag about and what makes us feel cool. I feel like I always go to like career stuff which may or may not like sound interesting because there's like a bunch of different ways that you could approach this question, but Grace was like, no, Erin, like you just had a really cool experience literally last week and I like totally forgot about it. So SoFi invited me to New York and invited me to speak on a panel for this event that they were having, and I feel like I didn't tell anyone about it because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Like they didn't give me a ton of details. They were like, "Hey, can you come speak on this panel?" And the reason why they asked me is because I got my mortgage loan with SoFi, and obviously I've been a creator with them for a long time, and I talk about them all the time on my channels. And they really wanted that kind of like first time home buyer POV for this panel. And I was like, sure, whatever, like whatever this event is, like I'll speak on the panel. And mind you, I hate public speaking. The podcast is enough, and we're kind of just talking to ourselves, like in our own offices. But I hate public speaking. But I was like, okay, whatever, push myself out of my comfort zone. I get to this event. It is in a penthouse in this luxury building in New York City. This penthouse was worth like $40 million, like so expensive, so nice. And everyone starts showing up, and they told me it was going to be an industry event in like the lending space, so like real estate investors, real estate agents, whatever. Still don't really know what that means until everyone starts showing up. And I don't know if you watch like Selling Sunset or any of those shows. They're all of the like real estate reality TV shows. I'm obsessed with
Okay.
them. I That's like my guilty pleasure TV show. I love like all of the drama and all of the real estate shows. And all of the real estate agents from those shows were there. Not all of them, not all of the Selling Sunset girls, but Emma from Selling Sunset, if anyone's listening is like a Selling Sunset fan, Emma was there. She was there with her boyfriend. And then a couple of the girls from the Owning Manhattan show, which I've watched as well, and that's like New York City based. So all of them were there. And I'm like speaking at this panel in front of all these people. I was like, what am I doing?
As you should.
What do you mean live?
No, I'm like, don't get me started with me being like, what am I doing there? You just and literally when we were trying to come up with Erin's humble brag before we got on here. I was like, Erin, you just bought a house at 25 by yourself. By yourself. Like, and again, it's not to say that someone who like buys a house with somebody else is,
Yeah.
is not as successful, whatever. But I'm like, you literally bought a house at 25 by yourself. Like a nice house, a new build, nice house. Like
She's
that
cute.
you paid for.
I did pay for it. She's very cute. No, I am proud of that. I am totally proud
So
of
like
that.
that's why you're there. That's why you're at the SoFi event because you did that
Oh.
and you're very financially literate and you got your home loan and you knew what you were doing. You did your research and you're financially savvy. You're a SoFi affiliate. You've got all the things, in order. That's why you're there. That's why you're in the room with these people.
Yeah, it is so interesting though, like how, I mean, going back to this question in general, we don't really take a lot of time to kind of celebrate our wins or reflect on like why we're getting certain opportunities or anything like that. I think my first instinct whenever something cool comes in or a new opportunity comes in is like, why did I get this? You know, like
Mm.
we always kind of downplay our like why we're in the room or how
Yeah.
we could potentially be in the room. And I need to do a better job of that. It's the whole like identity thing, I think.
I know it is. And I also think too in this space and when you're around people who are so career driven and are having like these insane opportunities left and right, it just becomes like normalized. And it is something that I always say like to my manager and everything all the time. I'm like, sometimes like as a creator, as just an entrepreneur in general, you have to just like check your privilege in a lot of moments and be like, okay, hold on. I'm literally, getting invited to this like crazy event. Like I was invited to this like financial wellness retreat in January and I was like completely over the moon, like so like excited. Like literally I will never like forget that. It was like the coolest experience ever. But it's like I never want to like lose that feeling where I feel like these opportunities are crazy. Or like I got an offer from a dream brand the other day and my manager like forwarded me the email and was like, I'm screaming like in capital letters. And I was like, I'm screaming. I was like, I'm freaking out, hoping like the deal goes through. And the same thing, I never want to like lose that. But I also have to be like, remind myself like yeah, I'm getting invited to these things like for a reason, and there it's because of how I've positioned myself or how I show up online, or like brands see something in me. And like I don't know, you definitely do have to think about that. One of my friends recently, she's like, okay, here's an idea. We celebrate your freelance anniversary, like when you started your like marketing company, we should celebrate that. And I was like, you are actually like the cutest thing ever. Like the fact that you want
That's
to
so
celebrate the
cute.
anniversary, right? I was like, you want to celebrate the anniversary of my business. And this was just after like, it was after a Bible study one morning. I think I just like mentioned something about my career during the Bible study. And I was just like the fact that she realized it was important to me and wanted to celebrate it. I realized I'm like, dang, I don't think I've ever celebrated the anniversary of my company, and I've had my company for 4.5 years. So I was like, wow, I need to think about how I celebrate myself a lot more. Maybe do an episode on that
Yeah.
because I'm like, dang,
No, literally. No,
we need to
I'm
hash some things out.
yeah, I'm the exact way. I remember my best friend sent me a little cake that said 100K when I hit
Yes,
100K.
I remember that.
And I like did it when I hit 100K. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." And then I just kind of like moved on. Like I
Hmm.
didn't I don't know. I think we downplay things that we should take time to celebrate, but it's
Hmm.
hard and it feels
It is.
weird.
It does feel weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like outward things. Like I never want to come off as like flashy because I'm
Yeah.
celebrating like a follower count or an income milestone or like a opportunity that like because I recognize the privilege and all of it. So I don't want to be like, woo, look at me. Like I just got this
Hmm.
thing. And, people are like struggling to eat in the world, like it's like a
Yeah.
weird balance of the two
Yeah.
things. But okay. Next question is said, okay, something I would love to hear your guys' perspective on. When people ask you if this is a sustainable long-term career, I get asked this a lot as a freelance UGC creator, and I never know what to say. It always strikes doubt in me that even though I feel really good in my career right now, what if this doesn't work out long term? Thinking like 10 years down the road, and just curious if you guys have struggled with that at all.
I really love this question because this is definitely something that I think about all the time. Obviously, it's our career, so we need to think about it. We have to kind of play the long game with it too. And I just sort of think about the fact that this is such a big industry right now, and the industry's not going anywhere. And I also think that social media and content creation is one, obviously, it's not AI proof. Like, there are aspects of it that AI is changing the industry in, but it is one of the only things that AI like can't totally replace because it is so like human generated. And obviously there's like AI tools that are coming out that are creating content with people's faces and things like that. But largely you do need a person behind the camera. So I do think that this is sustainable long term. And obviously in the course of our career being 30 or 40 years, it's going to change a lot and you need to keep adapting, but that's like any industry. If you code, the industry is going to look different 30 years from now versus what it looks like today. You're probably going to need to learn like a new coding language or whatever it is. So no matter what you do, your job day to day is going to change. But I think overall, like social media is not going anywhere as an industry, and it is totally sustainable long term. And I also just kind of think about like how many opportunities there are within the industry as you keep going in your career. Like for example, this person mentioned user generated content or UGC. And when I got started, I remember my first UGC gig, I made $25 a video and the brand would like send me the scripts and I would just film the videos and edit them and submit them to the brand. And now I'm obviously like much further along. I do a lot of like the UGC strategy and I like work from the brand's perspective and all of that. But now I'm doing the hiring of those entry level UGC creators where I'm finding creators to script the videos for and send them to the creators. The creators are filming them and editing them for like $25 a video around there. So it's just kind of it evolves and you start doing different things, but the industry as a whole is not going anywhere. It's one of the biggest industries right now, and it is largely AI proof.
Yeah, I agree. I think when people ask me if it's a sustainable long-term career, I always am like, well, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. Like that's always been my thought process. I think in entrepreneurship, there's always a possibility that it does not work out with literally everything. Like there are certain things I think are sustainable in the sense of a service we will always need. Like hairdressers and barbers. Like, I don't see a world where robots start cutting our hair. Like I think there will always be people there, or plumbers, or construction workers, or things like that. That we will always there will always be demand for. But with running a business, any kind of business, you have to adapt. Like. Even we see with like hair trends, for example, the hair trends have changed so much over the last like 10 years. I remember when like balayage first like came out and everyone was getting a balayage and all these people were going to these trainings learning how to do balayage. Like if you were a hairdresser running a business and then you just didn't learn how to do a balayage, well, you're probably going to start to lose some clientele and your business might not be sustainable anymore because you're not keeping up with what's going on. And so I think the same thing about having an online business that it will change. The industry is going to change. Even now, like I find that like I have to learn how to use like AI tools. And if I don't, like I'm probably going to get left behind in a lot of my like, the work that I do. Or with social media, just the way that we go about marketing now that there are AI generated content creators or things like that. Or, we're seeing that, okay, well, brands can make certain things, a lot faster using AI. Well, so how do I adapt and stay on top of things? And I think you can make a career sustainable as long as you're willing to adapt. I think it becomes unsustainable if it is something that you're not willing to adapt to stay relevant in. And I think that's where a lot of, excuse me, I think that's where a lot of people get lost is they don't want to adapt. They're like, no, but I like doing it this way and I want to do it this way. And I'm like, that is so beautiful and gorgeous that you love doing it one way and one way only. But when the industry is developing so rapidly, I think you do have to like learn to adapt and keep up. Um, but yeah, I see it as a long-term thing. I also think too that there might come a time where, in specifically on the topic of like UGC and content creation, there may come a day where brands are using AI creators in their paid ads. But I think that we as consumers are going to start to be able to like see through that. And I think we want to see actual human beings. And I mean, yes, there's a lot of AI that creates stuff that's like very scarily realistic that you're like, is this a real person or is this not? Um, but I do still think that a lot of brands are going to work with actual, like real human beings over AI. I think a lot of brands are also skeptical of doing that, of like having all their stuff just be AI. So I don't see it as something that's going to be like fully replaced really ever, but I do think there will be areas that we have to adapt.
I also think that it's easy to look at the social media industry as a whole and say, well, that's so oversaturated. Everyone wants to be an influencer, everyone wants to be a content creator, or whatever it may be. But being in the industry, I can tell you for sure there is still so much demand for this skill. And the skill being creating the content, talking to the camera, being the one to have like your face to the camera. The reason why these brands who have huge marketing departments still outsource the content creation is because no one on their marketing team is willing to do it. No one who is emailing these content creators being like, can you make videos for us? They themselves are not willing to pick up the camera and talk to the camera and make the video. It's like actually crazy. And I also think with that, people underestimate how much of a skill it is to create these videos. I was just having this conversation with my friend the other day because her full-time job is in the restaurant industry. She's in sales. So with that, a lot of her clients are restaurant owners. And one of her restaurant owners hired her freelance to be their social media manager because they're like, we need content on our social media. You already know our restaurant, like whatever. And she sent me an audio message yesterday and was like, Erin, I went to the restaurant like trying to get content and that was so bad. I had all of these ideas and nothing turned out good. And like, this is really hard, basically. And I'm not saying like it's the hardest job in the world, but it is a skill. It is a skill. And it's a very in-demand skill. Looking at all of her restaurant owner clients, all of them could use help with their social media. None of them have someone boots on the ground taking content, posting reels onto their page. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the way that consumers find where they want to eat today. So it is very in demand. Grace and I were even talking about this in relation to the podcast this morning too. We do a lot of like competitive research in the podcast space, obviously looking at like who our competitors are, what podcast episodes they're putting out. And we're like, there actually aren't that many big podcasts in our space. Like there really are. And it's easy to look at it from afar and be like, podcasting is so oversaturated. But when you really dig into it, there really aren't that many podcasts. There's obviously some that are huge, and we're probably never going to be as big as like a Mel Robbins anytime soon. But there's only a few Mel Robbins out there. So it's not oversaturated as an industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Okay, next question is for Erin. And it's, Erin, I would love to hear more about your full-time job. How do you balance it with creating content?
Okay, I do want to talk about this because I probably, it's very confusing. It's very convoluted. So, if you've been here for a while, you might remember that I used to work full time with this startup. The startup is called Ditch. And basically, what happened was in 2023, I was creating content on my channels in the finance space for about a year and a half. And I was still working my corporate audit job. And I randomly got connected with this startup founder, the founder of Ditch. And he just quit his job to start building this app. The app wasn't even live on the App Store, but we got connected and he was like, you should quit your job and come be my head of marketing. And I was kind of wanting to quit my corporate job anyway. And I was like, this is good, right? He's going to pay me a salary. It wasn't a high salary or anything, but he's going to pay me a salary. I'm going to still have a full-time job, but it's more what I want to do because it's in marketing. So I quit my job. I started doing that full time for 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, I went to him and I was like, hey, you don't really need a full-time marketing person right now. Like the app just went live on the App Store, but it still wasn't at like a really good place to go and scale. Like if we would have scaled, if we would have had a video that hit millions of views and a million people downloaded the app, like we would have went bankrupt. We didn't have our business model figured out, right? And so we needed to do a lot of work on the product side. So I went to him and I was like, I think you should take my salary and put it into like product people and engineers. And this is good for me too, because I kind of want to spend more time focused on my social media channels. So that was in the summer of 2023. I dropped down to a freelance marketing role with them. And it was a little bit ad hoc. Like we didn't have a ton of marketing work that needed to be done at that point, but I stayed kind of involved. And ever since then, I've been technically like on their advisory board. So still like involved in the company. Well, this summer, my boss came to me and was like, okay, we really do need to hire someone full time for marketing and growth. And like, we want it to be you, basically. And I was like, honestly, now's a good time for me to kind of step in and be more involved. Now that I'm settling back into my house and my content, I feel like I have really good systems set up. The podcast really doesn't take us that much time in any given week. So I kind of settled back into more of a full-time role. I will say, however, my boss approached me with this with the perspective of, I know you have things going on. Whereas a couple of years ago, we would get into little tips because, like, I would be working or I would have a meeting for myself at like 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, right? Like, he a couple of years ago wasn't necessarily okay with me having other things going on. But he approached me with this job offer and was like, I know that you have your own things going on, and like, I don't expect you to not spend time on them, but we need someone to like help us with marketing, right? So he definitely knows that like, Grace and I are filming this at 10 a.m. on a Thursday. I have meetings for brand things. I create content for myself. I do spend time on content creation on a weekly basis. But on the flip side of that, he Slack messages me at like 8 p.m. Or on Saturday, we literally had an hour-long call because we were both on our computer and we like needed to do something together. So we just called each other on the phone and like did the work on a Saturday morning. So it's a lot more blended rather than being like, okay, my full-time job, I need to be on the computer working for Ditch from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, which honestly is like my ideal scenario because that's how I'm used to working anyway. I get my work done when I need to get it done, but I still have that flexibility to work on my own things when I need to as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
it's a good mix, especially because you have your own business
Yeah.
going too, you know?
No, and it's been fun. Like I have really, really enjoyed focusing on something else other than just creating content for myself and obviously doing the podcast too. And the app is so cool. Like we're getting the best feedback from our customers. It really is at a good place right now. So it's been fun. I've been enjoying it.
Yay. I love that.
Cool. Let's go on to the next one. This says, how did you get back into a good routine of waking up early? This question came for you because I am not in a good routine of waking up early right now.
I think I must have mentioned it like on one of the podcasts, or if I know I got this on my social media as well, because I had talked before about how I was sleeping until like 8:30, 9 o'clock sometimes on weekdays because I don't, well, I do now, but for the longest time, like the last couple of years, I haven't set an alarm in the morning. I just wake up, my body is ready because when I found out I had celiac, my doctor was like, you need to like really just rest. And I was like, okay, I wonder if I stop setting alarm, like how long I would sleep for. And I started sleeping like 14 hours a night. And it was actually crazy. But then it slowly got more normal. But my body, with all my health issues, have always needed more rest. And so whenever I'd go to bed, I just feel like let my body wake up when it needs to and just take care of it that way. But I feel like I started getting into this bad habit of staying up later because I was so busy during the day and then I would have things after work because I was saying yes to like lots of plans that then I would just want to spend some time alone at night and I would like do my puzzle till like 11 o'clock or midnight and then I would go to bed and not wake up until like 9 o'clock. And my most productive hours of the day are like the first couple hours after I wake up, and usually earlier in the morning from like 8:30 to 10:30 is like when I'm really in a good space. So it was just not working out, and I was like, all right, I need to actually change something here. And I I basically like one night I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed extra early. And I think I got into my bed at like 8, 8:30, and my goal was to be fully asleep by 10. I do my night routine of I journal and I write like a list of things, like positive things that happened that day. I like journal my thoughts out and then I write out my affirmations and I say my affirmations out loud. And then I read my book. And I genuinely think reading before bed like changed my life. I've been doing it for like 2.5 years maybe at this point, and I have not missed a day. It just helps me like wind down and makes me like actually sleepy, which if you're having trouble sleeping or getting into a good routine of like going to bed and waking up, definitely try something like that. Put your lights, like dim your lights if you can, or get like a dimmable lamp so it's like not as bright and it just like makes me so sleepy. But that first night, I don't think I actually was able to fall asleep till like 11 something. And then I still set my alarm for 6:30 the next morning and I woke up and I got up and I was very tired. I did my whole morning routine that I established for myself. But the thing was, is then because I was so tired, then like later that day, I just went to bed really early. Um, where I was tired by like 10 o'clock and I fell asleep by 10 o'clock. And then it was after only a few days that I was really able to get myself on a good schedule. Um, but yeah, I think the first few days you're just going to be a little bit more tired, to be honest. And I think that's kind of the best way to do it. Just, I would say, try to sync it up with a day when you can be a bit tired, like do it on a Sunday or something when you can have like a chill afternoon, or like on a Saturday when you know you're just going to be hanging around at home. If you have a job where like you obviously don't want to be really exhausted that day, like maybe don't. Or if you have like a physical job where you don't want to be tired, maybe don't make that your first day you try to do your morning routine. But yeah, after a few days, it got better. And now I try to go to bed. I try to be in bed or like starting my little nighttime routine by like 9 so I can be eyes closed by 10. It doesn't always check out to be that way, but yeah. And then I'll sleep in on the weekends if I'm like really tired.
Yeah, you have to just be tired for the first couple of
Yeah.
days, like you're going to be, but it's fine. I also think if you're having trouble with, because I did this for the longest time where I would set my alarm, but then in the morning I would be like, oh, this is optional. Like
Hmm.
I don't have to get up right now. Schedule yourself a workout class, even if it's like hot yoga where it's kind of low impact. Schedule it for super early. You're gonna have to get out of bed, and yes, you're gonna be tired, but you're gonna feel really good when you wake up in the morning. That
Hmm.
definitely helps me too, at least for the first couple of days, because yeah, then when you are tired, you can go to bed so much earlier the next night.
Hmm.
I have not been in a season of waking up super early. I I honestly haven't been since I moved into my house. And I've been sleeping like 12 hours a night. It's crazy because we go to bed super early. We go to bed at like 8:30, and like I'm asleep by 9 every single night. Last
Oh
night I
my
was like, because
gosh.
we watched Survivor until 9:30, so I was up until 10:30.
Wow, you crazy girl.
Yeah, late night for me. But I will go to bed at 8:30 and wake up at 7:30, which is 11 hours of sleep.
Wow.
But I feel like my body can operate really well with low sleep too. Like it's fine.
Oh.
And the Aura Ring actually came out with like the new version of the Aura Ring came out with something called sleep debt, which is
Yes.
basically like how much sleep you're lacking. So I feel like it's starting to tell you, and I'm not a sleep doctor or anything, but I feel like it's starting to tell you like if you get a lot of sleep and then one night like you get a lot less sleep, you might not be as tired because you're like accumulating it from other nights, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, I know I updated my Aura Ring app recently and I have like the sleep debt thing. And the first night it said I had like 3 hours of sleep debt. I was like, oh my goodness. And that was like pretty high, I guess. I don't know. Now I think I only have 40 minutes of sleep debt, but I'm the kind of person that if I do not sleep like 8 to 9 hours, I mean, I feel fatigued 24/7. Like even if I sleep 8 to 9 hours, I still feel fatigued because of my health stuff. So to me, it's not sleep is not always like to recharge. Like I
Mhm.
feel rested when I wake up, but then I'm still fatigued. But if I do not get 8 to 9 hours, I will be fatigued and not well rested. And so I will be like irritable and I don't
Yeah.
function well on low sleep. I just don't. I know some people who are like, yeah, I sleep like 6 to 7 hours. I'm like, what? What? I couldn't do it. Like I actually could not do it. I do also think to your point of scheduling a workout class in the morning, even just like doing it, starting it when you are obligated to get up for anything. I know there's like these weekly walks that are at like 6:30 in the morning in St. Pete, and they're like a faith-based walking slash run club, and I don't go very often because you're meeting a lot of different people and I don't small talk at 6:30 in the morning with strangers is like a lot for me. Like I need to like unthaw in the morning and or thaw. I don't think you can unthaw. I need to thaw out in the morning. But I don't go super often. But when I tried to get back in the morning routine, I was like, I'm gonna go. And a friend of mine who lives in the same apartment as me, we were like, we are gonna go together because we both have been slacking on going. And I was like, I know I'm not gonna let her down. Like I'm gonna wake up and make sure that I'm going because I don't want to let her down. I would snooze on myself, but not on her. So just finding something, or even if you're like, I'm gonna go for a walk tomorrow morning, um, with like, with a friend or whatever it is, like book something in so that you're like you have to show up for it.
Yeah, find a friend that you can walk with. There's a group of ladies that are probably like 40 or 50 in my housing complex that all walk at like 7 a.m. every morning, even
I
on
love it.
Saturdays. There's like six of them. I'm like, this is crazy.
That's
Like,
so cute though. We
yeah,
need
it
to
is
bring
so
back
cute.
things like that.
I
Like,
know. I'm like, can I join?
no, you should. You should ask. I feel like they would love it. They're like, give us like a different perspective, you know? And I feel like you'd get so much wisdom from them.
Yeah.
Wow. I think, yeah, we need to bring back stuff like just little bits of community in our day, you know? I feel like that, I just think about when we grew up and how it was always like you always see your neighbors all the time. And I remember like going to my neighbor's house next door and being like, I'm making cookies and I ran out of flour. Do you have some flour? You know what I mean? Like those little
Hmm.
things that you would do like back in the early 2000s. It was like, feels like it was a different world. And I feel
Yeah,
like
it
those
does.
types of things, like going for walks with your neighbors was so common. And now I feel like
I know.
I don't know.
I'm really
I just
trying to
miss
stay
it.
friends with my neighbors right now because Bella like needs friends. Bella's very under socialized here and we see dogs around, but you know how it's always that awkward thing with dogs where until you know for sure if that dog is friendly, you kind of feel like you
Yeah.
can't interact with the dog.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of like pulling our dogs away from each other. So she needs some friends. She's
Yeah.
under socialized.
Aw. Yeah, and so she doesn't bark at the neighbors. Sometimes we'll
Yeah.
be sitting here and one of Erin's neighbors will like go by and then the dog, like Bella will just start barking. So it's like we gotta get you familiar with all the
She
neighbors.
barks. Yeah, she barks for sure. Um,
Okay. Last question we have is any advice on how to stick to a budget and prioritize paying off debt when it seems like my friends and other people my age are able to spend so freely? Things like going shopping and getting drinks/food aren't a big deal to my friends, while I have to make sure everything fits into my budget. It just feels like they are somehow able to spend freely while I am still living super frugally like I did while I was in school. Any advice?
The biggest thing that I will say is most people are spending out of their means. In everyone's tolerance for what they are comfortable with financially is very, very different. I feel like I get a really good perspective on this because since I obviously talk about money on the internet, a lot of people come to me for money advice. Like not even people that I'm like super, super close with, but just kind of acquaintances. I feel like I know generally everybody's financial person or like situation, which is kind of crazy, but it's also really good because we can talk about these kinds of things. And what I will say is most people are very comfortable not being in a great financial position and still spending as if they are, which is really sad. But I do think it's kind of the thing where like everyone just wants to fit in and keep up. And that doesn't have to be your case. Like for example, a lot of my friends went to Montana this year, like a couple months ago, on a girls' trip, and I said no. I was like, I have a lot of expenses coming up with the house and everything, and I'm just not in a position to go take a big trip and fly across the country. So I said no. And they had a really good time and they still talk about memories on the trip, and I just had to be okay with missing out. So that's the biggest thing that I'll say. The second thing is get good at saying no to things that you know are going to be very expensive, but also be the one to suggest things that aren't super expensive. So for example, what this could look like is if your friend suggests going out to dinner, saying, "Hey, I'm busy that day, can't make it. However, do you guys want to come over next week?" So that everyone can come over. You don't have to spend any money. You can still get that quality time with your friends and like not feel like you're missing out on everything.
I completely agree about your point of like people's tolerance for what they're comfortable with their finances. I remember when I was in college, I would always be like, how is everyone getting like a brand new dress for every sorority, event? And how do these people have like, you know, constantly have like all the name brand clothes and whatever, and then how people were traveling for every spring break and over every summer. I was like, how are people actually affording this? Because I'm like, I know you work at the dining hall and I know the minimum wage here is $10. And I'm like, I'm also making $10. Like, I just could not understand it. And I could understand to a degree, okay, like people's families, like, buy them things, whatever, like that aspect I could get. But I was like, are your parents paying for you to go on a vacation and for your Ugg boots and for your this and that like I was like I'm so confused and I genuinely had no idea where people were getting the money from. And I remember when I think it wasn't until like I almost graduated college or after I graduated, I started doing like personal finance content writing, and I was reading about all different financial stories and also talking about it on the internet. And I remember having this moment where I was like, they're in credit card debt. Like I was like, what? And not to say this person's friends are in credit card debt. I don't know their financial situation, but I did not realize just how much people were putting things on a credit card because I was always like afraid of debt. I don't know. I just always like always was that way. And it never ever crossed my mind to put something I could not afford onto a credit card. And again, it goes back to what people's tolerance are. Like some people will have credit card debt and will still go out and spend money on things that they don't need and put it on their credit card to add it on. Or I once heard about someone who put a vacation, it was probably like $3,000 to $5,000 on their credit card, and they were like, it's no big deal, I'll just pay it off later. And I was like, by the time you actually pay that off with interest, it's going to be like a $10,000 vacation for a week in college. Like it doesn't make any sense. But I think when you're trying to pay off debt, because I went through this when I graduated college with like 70,000 of student loan debt, and I was so adamant about paying it off. I was living so frugally. There was a lot of moments where I would have friends that would go do things, and just because they didn't have debt, they could spend their money how they wanted to. Um, but I was like, I'm just gonna have to be okay with, like you said, with missing out. I'm gonna have to deal with the FOMO and be like, okay, yeah, I see people my age. I remember having a conversation with my my old therapist about this. I was like, I see people my age that are like living in a city and they're constantly like going out and they're wearing such cute clothes and they're traveling all the time and whatever. And I'm at home at my parents' house so that I don't have to pay rent. I'm literally spending $400 a month on discretionary spending. That's for, and I've talked about this before in the podcast, that was for everything that I wanted. That was a want, 400 bucks a month. And, and putting every extra dollar onto it, onto my debt, and then also trying to save and invest at the same time. And I was like, this is not fun. But I realized I wouldn't want to trade for their situation, you know, like I knew what my financial goals were. I wanted to be financially responsible and it was important to me. But yeah, I think the practical aspect is like saying no to things that you like if your friends want to go get, you know, drinks or go shopping, you can go with them and like window shop, you know, or go to dinner and get something that's like, you know, like eat something before and then just get an appetizer or something like that. Or just get I don't drink, so I'll just get like mocktails or whatever at the bar because I don't want to spend money on drinking, but also just like you being the one to initiate plans. And be okay with the FOMO, like be okay with like quote unquote missing out because like
Yeah.
you're not gonna look back 10 years down the line and be like you're gonna be glad that you prioritize your finances, you know?
Yeah, and on the tolerance piece too, I think credit card debt aside, people are it's a lot different how people view like what they can afford in terms of like money in their savings account too. Like I think I'm very risk averse in terms of I keep a pretty large emergency fund. I
Mhm.
definitely have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses sitting in a savings account for, I don't want to say no reason, but like if I lose my income, basically, or if something catastrophic happens. But I think a lot of people, especially in their 20s, if they have the money in their checking account, they can afford something. Whereas, like, if
Mhm.
that's not your standard for your finances, that's okay. And that's probably a good thing. But don't think that you're, what's the word that I'm looking for? Don't think that you're like weird or different for thinking that way about your money. That's how you should think, but a lot of young people don't think that way. Or like if they have $1,000 in their savings account, some people are like, oh my gosh, like that's all I need in my savings account. Like that's my emergency fund. Whereas I would feel very, very unsecure and unsafe if I only have $1,000 in my savings account. So everyone kind of thinks about money differently and everyone's in such a different situation. So yeah, don't feel bad if you're sitting there thinking like, well, I do have the money to spend for it, but it's not going to make me feel safe and secure with my finances if I do spend my money on that. Like that's okay. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I think like the way that you have learned about money throughout your entire life or how you grew up financially or the situation that you're in, even with debt. I remember when I would say, "Oh, I have $70,000 of student loan debt," some people would be like, "Oh my gosh, like that is insane," because they had 20,000 and felt like their 20,000 was like an insane amount of debt. So it's just really relative to like yeah, like how you grew up financially and like what money beliefs you learned growing up or money beliefs you've established, you know, even later in life or how much you make or what your financial goals are. Like you said, if you have you know, if you have kids and a mortgage and a dog and you know all these different responsibilities, right, beyond yourself, your emergency fund is probably going to need to be larger for you to feel safe and comfortable versus if I was living at my parents' house, maybe my emergency fund would be less because I don't, you know, if I lose my income, I still have a place to go. Like I don't have to worry about my rent, right? It's just it is so relative to what, you know, to your financial situation and yeah, it does not make you weird though for or like different or makes you different in the sense of like you're being more financially responsible than the average person, I would say, to be like, hey, I'm prioritizing my financial goals over, you know, going out and getting drinks. Um, but it doesn't make you weird. And I think it's actually
Yeah.
really wise to even be asking this question to be like, hey, what do I do here? Because I feel awkward about this, or I feel like, you know, yeah, just kind of off. Like I want to be able to prioritize my financial goals and but I also am like around people that, you know, maybe have different ones or aren't prioritizing theirs or view their goals differently or whatever. And yeah, I think it's a smart question to ask.
Agreed. And I do love questions like these. So if you have any more money related questions or anything like that, definitely leave them in Spotify because like I said at the beginning of this episode, we do these Q&As every single month on the last Friday of every month they go live. So you can leave all of your questions in Spotify. That's where we typically pull questions from. Sometimes we'll pull them from our Instagram DMs and things like that as well. So leave any questions or episode ideas or things you want us to cover in Spotify. But that brings us to the end of today's Q&A. Thanks for tuning into the podcast, and until next week.